Happy Sunday, everybody. I'm here today doing a Genung and the Restless with Riel, very valued member of the Patreon. He sends us loads of research that we use like all the time to bring you guys news. Today, I'm going to have a conversation with him about the lies in our geography around us. Him, as well as myself, we get into a lot of the, concave Earth, firmament, electric universe, and we have lots of conversations just between me and him on it all the time, but I wanted to bring some of those ideas to you guys. So before we get into it, Riel, just wanted to ask whose research videos, whatever it may be, got you into thinking these ways, believing these things, thinking to question what we are told is the sphere that we live on.
All right, Cam. Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it a lot. First of all, it's a pleasure to be a part of the Generation Z research team. It's a delight to be in the community of Generation Z. You and Dave are doing a fantastic job building a great community. For my own personal research, one of the accounts that got me started on this, as what I like to call being a space skeptic, is somebody's account. It's a Lord Stephen Christ's Concave Earth. They've only got 2,400 subscribers. They put out a lot of videos. I know that the title of their account can be a little jarring, but aside from the connotations of what you may feel from their account, the ideas and the paradigm that they're putting forth, to me, resonates, at least much more so than pretty much any other cosmological view of the sphere that we live on, if we can call it a sphere. I don't really know. But yeah, it would be Lord Stephen Christ's Concave Earth. A friend of mine a couple of years ago who really kind of started to give me like a dose of red pill stuff, referred that topic to me. There is actually a concave Earth community.
Right.
And to me, it actually doesn't necessarily dismiss hollow Earth or flat Earth or even crater Earth.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that they are all a piece of the puzzle. But the concave Earth is the one that's kind of got my attention the most. And when I look up at the sky, I've really been questioning everything lately.
Yeah, because it's not like any of us have been there. We see all these things about ways that we think they are lying about this. Well, why wouldn't they lie about just about anything else? Now, right, it is a plenty strange enough jarring name. More power to him, but I've watched his videos as well, and the work really is there. The flat Earth community, they get really like maligned very easily just because of the social norms that have been accepted of a sphere. But like, it's very clear just by observing that something is just not exactly how they say that it is. Immediately building into it, what are some of your favorite points and observations that anyone can make that just make things questionable at very least?
Okay, well, there's a lot.
Right.
So one of my favorite books is actually called Who Built the Moon? And that's by Robert Knight and Christopher Lomas. And that, powerhouse of a book is really questioning the narrative of what is the moon and how it got there. So that is kind of one of the celestial topics that got me really questioning about what we've been told about the solar system and about space. And I use the term space skeptic.
No, I love that term. You said it already. It's better than it's better than whatever conspiracy theorists like easily like portrayed wrong thing that that people want to say. It's not flat Earth. I'm literally skeptical of the space that we are in that they tell us. Right. Beautiful.
Well, and so like there's a lot to get into about what I'm questioning when I'm told about the shape of the Earth, the solar system, the planets. Like I love astrology, I love astronomy, and even when sorry, I'm going to be jumping all over the place because it's such a vast topic.
That's where we are. We're having a conversation.
Yeah. So we got the moon, we got the sun. Like there's a lot of stuff about the sun that when I even look up at the sky, I don't really understand what is going on. Like does the sun give us skin cancer, or is it giving us vitamin D to fend off a certain virus that is plaguing the Earth right now through vitamin D? Okay. One of the main organizations that tells us all of the information about space is NASA. And
Mm-hmm.
if you just spend a few minutes looking online, you'll read the history of NASA and who started it with
Mm-hmm.
Werner von Braun through Operation Paperclip, which was he was known as Hitler's favorite rocket engineer because
Right.
he was the godfather of I think it's the V2
Yes,
rocket.
V2 rocket.
So yeah, so through Operation Paperclip, the United States intelligence programs brought on all of the scientists from Germany that they were afraid of going to Russia. At least this is the surface level story, and probably
Right.
behind the scenes, Russia and the United States are sharing intelligence information anyways.
Yeah.
But if you like, I question the authority figures that are giving us all of this information. So pretty much anything that NASA tells us, I do not trust.
Right, because
Um,
you have every right to. I mean, if we're supposed to not like these people that started these things from the things they did before that, why are we going to continue to trust what they're doing, right? But,
mhm,
you know,
mhm.
that's just the clear surface level history. So it's strange that we're just supposed to forget. Um, but NASA does lie to you. It seems like they do time and time again. The funniest thing, I guess, the question I have next would be why what good does it do them? Like this control mechanism of lying about whether we were just a divot in a giant bigger sphere, whether we were on flat Earth, whether we were, in a concave Earth, hollow Earth. What good do you think that it really does people like NASA to just not tell the truth?
Hmm. Well, that's a good question. And I like the idea that information is power.
Mm-hmm.
So those that have what could be true information want to keep it within their own shared circles
Yeah.
and don't want the average people to really know what's going on because you maintain your power and control by not letting people have access to certain information. Um, like I personally really don't like being lied to. That's a
Mm-hmm.
bit of a pet peeve of mine. So if I find out that somebody's not telling me the truth, I, start to question everything that they do. If it just happens once, well, then maybe it's happened again.
Right.
Um, I do want to go back. So you asked me about like phenomena that I'm
Yeah,
questioning,
sure.
and as
Absolutely.
I'm
You got more. Go for it.
thinking
Yeah.
about it, rainbows. So
Mm.
okay, there are some main things there. So with the moon, the sun, like the general cosmology of heliocentricity, with the sun being 93 million miles away, the fact that the sun, moon, and the Earth, their orbits interact so perfectly that it's
I know. Right.
astronomically it shouldn't exist. It shouldn't happen.
It's so
Which
perfect, like the way the eclipses happen and things
yeah, yeah,
perfectly
yeah.
be this. Like it makes so much sense that
Yeah,
it can't
the
be normal.
ratios of
Yeah.
of the sun, the moon, and the Earth, the speeds of their orbits, the official narrative of how the moon exists, which is the wham theory, but then they
Mm-hmm.
created the double wham theory, which is a meteor crashed into the Earth, and then that chunk of rock flew off into space, and then just happened to catch into the Earth's gravity perfectly enough
Just
to
sat
make
there.
this
Yeah.
magnificent like ecosystem in space. The testimonies of NASA astronauts. Like, if I'm going to trust any intelligent people in the on our planet, it would be astronauts because they're
Right.
supposed to be some of the most intelligent, qualified people. But when I watch the moon landing and I watch the interviews of people on the ISS and you listen to Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong talk in their post astronaut careers, there's things that just like it doesn't make sense. It's like they've got some sort of mind control programming that's preventing them from answering certain questions,
Right.
or they just have some sort of cognitive dissonance with a certain idea. They get really agitated when they're asked certain questions. So, in addition to that, you got rainbows, which are phenomena that have been explained from middle school as light from the sun that is refracting through raindrops that act as
Right.
prisms, which create this beautiful rainbow.
Mm-hmm.
But that has never really like quenched my uh, thirst for
The
answers about
explanation.
what's
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That just does like, okay, that's the surface level, but what's really going on? Double rainbows, then that phenomenon, it's like, how does a double rainbow happen? What
Right.
it To me, when I see this bow of light, to me indicates that there is some sort of like maybe firmament that is
Mm-hmm.
causing refraction from the light that we call the sun, which to me could, very well just be a battery or a light bulb in this terrarium that we live in. Um,
As easy enough explanation as any of it, right? Exactly.
mhm,
The
mhm,
the architecture, the curve of that rainbow,
mhm,
it doesn't, right, there's no
mhm,
raindrop that's so big that it's refracting that giant rainbow through it in one. And if double rainbows happen, then what are there, two levels of
mhm.
rain? Like, yeah, no, these
Well,
things
and
don't
so and
exactly
then
line up.
like sun halos or sun
Mm,
dogs. That's
mm-hmm.
another one where, they say that it's because the crystallization in the atmosphere is what causes these like perfect circles around the sun in this a
I
super
actually,
sunny day.
for people's reference, I have a beautiful picture of this that is just the sun, zero clouds in the sky, and a
Hmm.
perfect 360
Hmm.
degree rainbow circle around it. I'll put it
Hmm.
up
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah.
video in this,
Well,
actually.
and actually, so with this concave Earth account that I follow, he does 3D programs of showing you his model of what the Earth actually is, and they call it the celestial sphere. And he says
Mm,
basically that the sun and the moon and the stars and the planets are all inside of a double layer firmament, which is a glass sphere. And
mhm.
the first glass sphere is what causes regular rainbows, and the second glass sphere is what causes the double rainbows. And I think that I've shared in our Gen Z this montage clip. It's like
Right.
3.5 minutes long of sun halos, and it's just there's so many pictures and so much evidence about this to suggest that there's something up in the sky that's refracting light that's not just basic raindrops. Because to
Hmm.
me, the light would be scattered
Right.
if it's raindrops. Like another one is mega cryometeors. Now, I know that's a bit of a
Not
mouthful.
everyone will know what that is. I think I do, but let's give me
Yeah.
a rundown.
So in this model of our planetary, uh, I think we live in a terrarium. That's
Right.
like an accurate word, which goes into greenhouse gas effect because,
Beautiful. Yeah.
yeah,
Right. There you go. Good one.
um, the mega cryometeors is that inside of the glass sphere there is a layer of ice. And now, for me, this is where we get into the wall of ice that the flat earthers believe.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
again, I don't mean to use it as a derogatory term. That's just, group of people they identify as flat earthers, paid power
Right.
to them. But I do think that the flat earth is just a piece of the puzzle. And even
Mm-hmm.
if we live in what is a concave earth, it doesn't mean that we don't, that things aren't flat. It's like I live in
Right.
Winnipeg, Manitoba. It's flat. It's you see for a very long time.
Very long time.
Um,
Yeah.
and maybe just to clarify, in this model, when we say concave, try to think of it as the opposite of convex. So convex model is what we have now, or what we've been told about the Earth, where you're on the surface of the Earth and you're looking out into space. You're on like you're this little person on my finger here. You're looking out into space, and that's convex. But concave is the opposite of that.
You would
So
be
it's like
looking further into space.
yeah, so in this model, when you're actually looking at the sun, you're looking inside the planet,
Right.
and that the sun is actually the power generator inside uh, the Earth,
Hmm.
which very interesting because Rick and Morty, for example, as we've talked about in Generation Z, has many episodes of disclosure being dropped, and the episode where it's a universe powering a universe powering a universe. So it's almost as if like the sun is a battery that's powering a civilization,
Right.
but when we look out, we're told that we're looking out into space, but we're actually looking inside the planet. And then this is, for me, that's a bit of a segue into like Hollow Earth and
Hmm.
General Admiral Byrd going to the center of the Earth, Jules Verne, who's one of the godfathers of science fiction, Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Which
And
may
where
not
did
have
that
been
idea come
telling so
from?
much fiction, basically, is
Mm-hmm.
the thought
Mm-hmm.
there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's
Um,
it's it's the drop feeding. Hollywood doesn't lie to us is a thing that I say all the time, but also uh, entertainment hasn't lied to us forever. They are able to put Journey to the Center of the Earth, these ideas, into something else, to label it as fiction, so that then people associate that idea with a fantasy story. The one I just found out about today, Boris Johnson's father himself wrote a book in 1980 something about a virus. William Barr's dad writing something about alien civilization, a interplanet intergalactic like conglomerate of board members. There's these people write science fiction, it seems, to discredit it as just that, fiction, when there may be some real science behind it. So it's interesting that you bring things up like that.
Oh, and just on that note, I myself just had an experience today in a bookstore where I picked up this book about crop circles, which it just blew me away. The sort of explanations of crop circles and how the symbols they represent, like all the platonic solids are literally shown in crop circles. But this, I picked up another book, which is by Christopher Knight and Robert Lomas, who wrote the book Who Built the Moon. They also wrote the book Uriel's Machine. And this book is called The Haram Key, which is exploring archaeology and Freemasonry and the teachings of Jesus and how it's been co-opted and all that, historical archaeological stuff. And of course, this is in the UFO section. But then I go to the archaeology section and I find a book that is the Shell Corporation's British Encyclopedia of Archaeology. So Shell, the gas station company, literally, and I mean, I know I use the word literally, but they funded and published the archaeology book to explore Stonehenge and all these ancient sites. But it's like, why is that considered actual archaeology? But this other one by these lesser known guys exploring the lesser known sides of archaeology considered UFOs. And when I read that, I see that it's the Shell Corporation is funding this. To me, it's like, okay, well, they're going to tell us, it's like, it's inevitable that the truth is going to come out. So how much of the truth can we control and keep suppressed? And that's when you get into the controlled opposition stuff, where maybe the authors that are associated with this book were willing to like, yeah, that's fine. Oh, as long as my name's attached to it, we don't need to tell all of the secrets about Stonehenge and all these amazing sacred sites. But like just seeing that in this bookstore today was just such an affirmation about my justification of being skeptical of everything.
Right, because like the Shell Corporation, the oil digging corporation, why do they care about the archaeology of the world? Aren't they like the ones actively destroying it and drilling in it and like messing it up? Why are we to believe that their narrative and explanations of things are what we want to believe? Because they care? No, it doesn't seem like they do. Yeah, it's an interesting like paradox, really, if you ask me. It doesn't make sense. But why is it that... Okay, I'll ask it this way. Sorry, I changed my method of questioning. Why do the concave Earth, the divot Earth, the flat Earth, why do they not... What's so easy to say no about to people? Why do you think the questioning can't just easily happen when we talk about points exactly like that? Is it because people don't want to have to spend the time shifting their worldview? Is it because the acceptance of what they've been taught in school is easier and move forward? Is it because it doesn't seem to impact them regularly? That's what I'm asking. Why is it seems so easy between me and you and loads of people watching this channel, right?
Yeah.
But why isn't it?
I think it kind of boils down to like your conditioning, your programming through education.
Yeah,
it's like how many people are taught something when they're young, and you're not taught to question stuff. You're taught to memorize it, memorize the answer, put it on the test, and then move on with your life. Right. You're not really, whereas for me, I've always been questioning everything, and that's gotten me into a lot of trouble with education and workplace environments. And
sure, right, totally. I get that.
But
I do.
yeah, I would think that actually, yes, that's a good question. And I had the fortune of actually meeting up with Dave today. We went on a walk. We were actually in the same province right now, and part of our discussion was about how there are so many people that watch science fiction, that want to believe, as X-Files, I want to believe, but there's something that's just preventing them from really taking that next step forward of actually accepting that you've been lied to about everything, that there's intelligent life out there, or that the earth isn't what it seems. And a lot of people, I think, just they're comfortable. A lot of people are comfortable, complacent, they like security. To challenge your paradigm is a very difficult thing. And for whatever reason, I'm blessed that my wiring from the moment I was born is to pretty much challenge my perception and to ask questions and to like I embrace having my paradigm shattered. That's like one of the things that I try to do all the time is find new ideas and new concepts to make me think differently. And that's how I learn and grow. And I feel like
Absolutely.
I've been kind of accelerating my personal journey on this planet in this lifetime, whereas a lot of people they just don't want to know. They don't want to put in the effort.
Yeah.
They really it I used to live with somebody who we would have these conversations, and one he's like he could follow me up to a certain point, but once we got to a certain level about things, you know, for example, 9/11, that's when
Hmm.
he'd be like, nope, I'm not going there. That's too much for me to think
Right.
that there's you know, inside job
Right.
kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah. Yeah.
vibes. And like, I mean, for me, I'm so far beyond that. It's just like it's a matter of fact in my reality that, you
Right.
know, there was, you know,
It
planning
I
happening
think
and
what
Mhm.
it really builds into, and then we'll get back because I have an important question about concave Earth. Um, the problem with that people have with what went too far for your old roommate, you said, it's like in questioning some of these things, you're diminishing loss of life and people that may actually have died. When what
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
really think you and I and people questioning any inside job type of thing are saying is that isn't it fucked up that the people doing these inside jobs don't care about the loss of life, that they are
Mhm.
actively
Mhm.
okay with making sacrificial lambs out of humanity? And that's more what I don't think people are
Mhm.
seeing that we're
Mhm.
saying. And so that's a
Yes.
very clear point that I want to make when we talk about those things. Now you talked about, you know, beings from outer space and things in that spiel you just had. When we talk about concave Earth, when we talk about the sun being the battery powering us all, then let's also incorporate aliens into that. Where do the aliens or UFOs, or whether they're military tech and not outside life, where does all that work into those kinds of thought processes?
Well, that's kind of goes back into the book that really got me opening my eyes of
Right.
like who built the moon.
Exactly.
And the quest like modern astronomers, well, the ones that entertain these ideas,
Hmm.
some of them say that the moon's existence doesn't make sense because of its properties, because of its weight, the fact that it rings like a bell when it got struck
Hmm.
by the Apollo rovers or
Right. It
lunar
really did.
landings.
Literally, look it up. Anyone,
Yeah.
it rang like a literal defined bell on the
Yeah,
inside, as if it
yeah.
was hollow itself, not anything crazy scattered. So it's a strange thing. Period.
Hmm. And I mean, yeah, then you've got some cultures around the world that talk about a time when the moon didn't exist, or a time when, you know, when they like 400,000 years ago is a time frame that is consistent amongst these testimonies of looking at these cultures, where about 400,000 years ago, apparently the moon showed up and it
Right.
wasn't there before. In some cultures, they talk about how Saturn is the original sun, and Saturn, you know, and that's its own very deep topic
Big.
about
Right.
what Saturn represents and all that. But some say that it used to be the original sun, and that the thing that we think of as the sun now actually it also just appeared and it wasn't always there.
It
And
just
it's
took
almost
over.
as if
Right.
there was some sort of like dome that was put around our planet to, you know, kind of keep us in quarantine or something like
Hmm.
that. And that's another consistent theme that comes up when you talk about the cosmic secret
With
space
these
program
those
whistleblowers and
right, those kind of things build into, if I'm not mistaken, electric universe, right, is where we're
hmm
really going with
hmm
that. And that's just as, to me, plausible and interesting
hmm
an idea as any. I know you know him very well. Ari Oslin of Paradigm
hmm
Threat gets really well detailed chronology of that idea. I mean, share some on what would be the electric universe theory for people.
Well, I actually paid more attention to like Wall Thornhill,
A
and
brilliant one
they
too.
are
He really,
the
yeah,
Thunderbolt
absolutely.
Project.
Yeah, no.
And a lot of these topics are like beyond my current like understanding. All I can do is listen to the ideas,
Mm.
process them, let them steep, and I by no means can explain the science of how they were able to create a star in a jar. But
But they
like,
did, right? So then like,
correct,
that's what
yeah,
I'm saying. It's more of that
yeah.
questioning thing. And so if, and correct me if I'm wrong here, the brown giant that would have been Saturn in Electric Universe would have been what we were really all encapsulated in our first dome, maybe so to call it, right? And then we
Yeah,
were all
and
expelled.
yeah, and like actually for me, I've paid more attention, or I've taken deeper dives in the rabbit holes of astrotheology,
Right.
And Jordan Maxwell is one of the ones that I'll just listen to hours and hours of his lectures, like specifically explaining how the Bible is a huge astrotheological metaphor, that
Mm.
everything in the Bible is, they're talking about the zodiac, they're talking about the stars, the planets, that everything in that book from Jesus to Mary to, all these other characters, they're
Yeah.
all in the stars, and that the Bible is an astrotheological metaphor. And then that goes into, kind of jumping over to the electric universe, where
Right.
we have Saturn, how in ancient cultures, Saturn is also called Kronos and Father Time, and that Saturn birthed the children, which were the Titans, and
Right.
ate them. So as if, Saturn, all of the planets in our solar system came from Saturn, which is Kronos, who
Mm-hmm.
also could be called Ra, Thoth, Quetzalcoatl, all of
Yeah.
these higher dimensional beings that are basically, we give merit to blessing humanity with our modern civilization, and it all comes from Saturn. And on that note, too, you got the hexagon on Saturn.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
how does anybody that, for just simplicity's sake, you've got the dichotomy of the red pill and the blue pill, when you show something like that roommate I had, when I told him, I asked him if you've ever looked at the hexagon on Saturn? And he's like, no, that's bullshit. What are you talking about? And I was like, well, please, let's take some time and just look into us right now. And his reactions, he just was dumbfounded. He had no explanation. He's like, oh, that's cool. Okay, bye. Just moved
But
on with
see,
his
there you
life.
go. That's interesting to me. How does that not make you say, okay, well, if this, then maybe that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because the hexagon on Saturn, that's not even, you can't call that conspiracy. I mean, if we're not believing NASA, but if they're telling us that it's there too, right? So like it's observable.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, and
observing,
on
go
that,
ahead.
like, sorry to interrupt, but
No.
on that, like as I said, I've been a space skeptic. So I think I might have shared this in the Generation Z chat maybe like 2 weeks ago, where Jupiter was really visible in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And I was texting a friend saying how nice it would be to have an actual telescope to see for myself what these celestial objects look like,
And
because
this is exactly what I was going to ask you. So I know where you're going. So this is great. This is perfect.
perfect. Yeah. Um, because all I can do is see for myself with the moon and the sun, and ask ask questions based on my observations.
Right.
And so that night, I within 20 minutes, I actually biked across somebody that had a big telescope set up on the riverbank in the city that I live in, looking at Jupiter and Saturn. And it was just like, okay, thank you.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
just
If you like,
really
what
grateful for this
synchronicity of all
opportunity.
synchronicities? Yeah.
And so I did see through this telescope Jupiter and Saturn. I
Hmm.
saw the rings of Saturn through this telescope with my own eyes. So that makes me wonder, okay, so if I see this, then how does that actually fit in with any of these other models that we're looking at?
Right.
So how I can't tell how far away these planets are. I can't tell how big these planets are.
Right.
And then that so then like I like to just go down like YouTube rabbit holes, and I found another one that's called Vibes of Cosmos, which talks about the okay, and this relates also to the electric universe theory, is that plasma is as basically what we think of as dark matter, but
Right.
instead of it being dark matter, plasma is everything. And maybe space is liquid and space is
Right.
plasma,
It's
but
not being a vacuum, but actually being that plasma,
correct,
which is
correct.
to me
It's
probably the
energy
most
is everywhere,
probable. Yeah.
electricity is everywhere, and it's a matter of harnessing the natural energy of our universe to be able to power us, our civilizations, to become either like a type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 civilization, etc.
Absolutely.
But in this model, it explains or suggests that Saturn, the rings of Saturn, are actually a plasmic imprint of Jupiter. And that when we see the conventional solar system, every planet, as you venture out from the sun, encompasses the previous planet's plasmic imprint. So
Mm.
it's a very, I mean, the words don't do it justice. We can maybe share the links to some of these videos
I will get
underneath
links
that
from
people
you
can
after
look for.
this and
Yeah,
put loads in the
absolutely.
description. I will. Yeah, I'd
And
like to
that
do
was
that.
really like, because when I see the rings of Saturn, and especially upon reading Norman Bergrun's book, The Ringmakers of Saturn,
Hmm.
where like this book, it's like $700. There's only a few versions out there available, but this is one that's constantly referenced of the by the kind of like elite whistleblowers that I trust as credible sources.
Yeah.
They
Okay.
say, read Ringmakers of Saturn. That is going to just blow your mind and really get you to kind of understand what is actually going on with our solar system and with this planet.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But going back, electric universe model, like I've really been looking into plasma as just I can't really say that I understand what's going on, but all I can do is
No. This isn't
remember
about
these
understanding.
terms
Yeah.
and just steep on them.
Right. No, that's explaining answers is not at all what we're trying to do here. We're literally having conversations on
Yeah.
on questions that everyone
Mm-hmm,
has.
mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, just trying to, fit everything in here. If you observe the Saturn, Jupiter, and like Saturn's rings and things, and then you also incorporate that this filler space is not a vacuum of nothing, but it's plasma, your scale can become entirely different on these things. So you really don't know, like you said, how big these things may be, how far away they may or may not be. So it's all just makes questions bring more questions. I get it. It does. Absolutely. And my sorry, but my next question on that is, if we don't think that any of that's real, or let's say it better, if what they tell us is to be the absolute truth and we think there's more going on, where do you think that leads us when we want answers? Do we try to figure out, like, how we as like the masses can go to space? Do we figure out, like, what I'm asking here? Like, what do you think really could be a way for us to try to sort through the weeds and find things to be truth or not? It's a hard question. I'm not asking for an answer. It's just a conversation.
Yeah. Well, what I think of when you ask me that is this thought I had the other day as I look up at the sky, and I just think, like, what if we're actually inside the Earth,
Mm-hmm.
in a hollow Earth, but we're actually inside the Earth, and when we look up, that's actually the ceiling, but on top of that is the actual surface.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
it makes me think of the Truman Show, which is just like, what you can't really trust anything that you're told. A big part of it is, to try to, like, I don't really know if there's any like universal truths,
Sure.
but one thing that really drew me to Generation Z, and specifically like listening to Dave, is his humility. And the fact that we're having a conversation right now, neither of us are saying, this is my dogmatic belief, this is the way it is. If you don't believe me, then you can go to hell, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
It's like, no. Like, hey, we're just shooting ideas out there in a safe environment where we know that we're not going to offend the other. We're both just like, oh, you're sharing something that I've never heard before. I'm going to write that down and look into it and incorporate that into my database of knowledge and understanding. And maybe you're giving me a piece of the puzzle that somebody else does.
Right.
I don't really.
Sorry, I think that's a big part of it. That's a beautiful metaphor. There is a puzzle to our reality, and each individual has a lot of pieces, but no one has every piece. And so by talking with other people, it's like we're born with our pieces to a puzzle, but also someone else's pieces in our puzzle box. And so we're missing some, but we have others. So, like, help each other finish each other's puzzles kind of things is really what I'm getting at. It's a really good metaphor for what should happen, instead of this, like you said, this dogmatic, this is what I believe and this happens to be the truth. It's important. And so, yeah, no, that's really what I think we're going for and trying to do. I think that's the best way to go about it.
And now, is the puzzle that we're trying to put together a 2D puzzle? Is it a 3D jigsaw puzzle? Is it a 4-dimensional puzzle, 5D? Like, maybe you've got pieces to fit that'll put together in the 2-dimensional realm, but I'm working over here on a 4-dimensional puzzle.
Exactly.
And the 2D pieces you have aren't really at the reality that I'm operating on, but there's layers to all of these puzzles. And
it's a deep, intense metaphor. It really works, though. I think that's what I think. And if you were to, let's think the best way to ask, if you were to decide that you did, like, because I don't know which really version of worldview I do believe most, but like, what resonates, I guess, is the best way to say it with you. What feels to your insides like the best overall explanation, what actually seems to be versus what anyone else has ever told you, kind of thing, like mixing it all together in different ways. a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Like, what makes the most sense to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think of when somebody, like, if I dismiss an idea and say, like, you know what, I don't really buy that, I don't believe it. Say, for example, the like heliocentric model of our
Yeah.
solar system. I've been told by many people that, okay, then what else is there? What do you believe in? It's like, well, I don't necessarily have an invested belief in thinking it's this way. All I know is that I don't resonate with that one, and
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
just gonna, not really pay much energy and attention to that paradigm, because to me it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't resonate with me. But I like, I'm working through this 8-hour documentary about flat Earth because I've never really given it the time, just like crop circles, honestly, because those are topics that get a lot of ridicule, get a lot of mockery. So I just stay away from them because I don't want to,
Right.
even if I find something compelling, nobody's going to really take it seriously. So I just avoided it until I found this book.
Well,
And
but there's
until I found
something to
this
be
8-hour
said for that.
documentary.
Right. There's something to be said for that, because you yourself and myself and other views that you do hold are ridiculed of the same degree and way. And it's like, if it's also, I mean, call it almost hypocritical not to give some of those views at least chances of understanding, right? No, I get what you're going for. I do. That's why I turn no idea down. I just am asking questions about any of it.
So, Cam, I've got a question for you.
Please.
What are your thoughts on all of these billionaires that are going to space? What is the deal, and what is the obsession? Do you think that they're actually, maybe you're familiar with Robert Bigelow and
Yeah.
his, quest to work with Bob Lazar and figure out what's going on with Area 51, who, to me seemed like a genuine guy. But when
Yeah.
you've got Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson that are doing this big old phallic shaped rockets going
Sex
going to
magic.
space and
Yeah.
spending all this money, like, do you think that they have insider knowledge? Are they trying to learn for themselves? Are they
Sure.
just being paid to be shills to keep up this act? Like, what are your thoughts on
Right.
that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. I do. There's something to be said there, because as the facts are the facts, you had, right, Jeff Bezos go up in this dick picky looking rocket. You had Richard Branson go in a Virgin shuttle that looked a lot like the female reproductive system. You had Jeff Bezos go literally 69,000 feet higher than Richard Branson. That's all kind of like, yeah, that's weird sex numbers and figures. That so like, what is going on in those kinds of things? We know that neither one of them went all the way through the atmosphere, right? That too. So there's kind of that plausible deniability in them going to what they would call space and them wanting to be astronauts. We, for better or worse, have to admit that these are parasitical members of society. I don't like calling them elites anymore. They do really fuck things up all the time, with little to no regard to everyone else. And so, are they shills? Maybe a good word for it, but I don't know that it's entirely that. It could be waving a shiny object in front of a monkey that will take the object. Did NASA or did Deep State or did whoever you want to call is running thing around with the real truths of the world approach these Richard Bransons and these Jeff Bezos and say, we want you to do something really cool. And they don't need to really know any more answers after the fact, but they got to do something really cool. They got to wear their cowboy hat and get in a Blue Origin space shuttle and go really, really, really high. So like, yeah, I think that because we talk about how compartmentalized everything is, and I think it is exactly that, so compartmentalized that I think that they did do exactly what they said they did, but they didn't have to get any more answers from that. They could do everything that they said they were going to do without really shattering worldviews. Like, they didn't actually see the vacuum of space. Correct me, anyone, if I'm wrong, right? But I don't think that they did. So like, maybe you could still incorporate all of that into all the firmament, the concave. They didn't go all the way to the battery in the middle of concave Earth. They didn't go past the firmament. They didn't,
Yeah.
right? So no answers could have been derived, at the same time being really cool for them and stirring the pot a lot for us, kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, thanks for the answer. And to me, it just kind of feels like it's, just kind of building on the UFO disclosure where all the
Yeah,
billionaires are doing it now. And it's just like one step further to normalizing this. I don't know, like, I mean, we had the space race in the late 60s,
sure,
70s,
right.
and then it just stopped.
Yeah,
But
no, that's never
what,
made sense to me either. Like, for real,
mhm,
you expect us to believe that you just stopped caring about putting people there
mhm.
at all?
One thing, I haven't watched the rocket launch from those two billionaires, but I've
Mhm.
watched some of the SpaceX rocket launches
Yeah,
and NASA's rocket launches. And I know in our Zoom calls with Generation Z, we have some folks that are kind of have some insider knowledge and have
right.
like entered given us the approval when we speculate that space isn't what we think it is. And
Mhm.
one of the things he's like, okay, you should watch that the rockets go sideways. They
Yeah,
they start to just tear off this way. So that's when I started to follow this crater Earth model,
yeah,
which is the idea that the planet that we live on, or planet, I say that word loosely, but whatever we
right.
live on is much, much, much bigger. Let's just say a random number of 1,000 times bigger than what we've been told.
Mhm.
And the crater that we live in is what we think of as Earth, and that these rocket launches are leaving Earth, but are just going to a different crater on this supermassive Earth.
And
What
that
you know
doesn't
that
have to, right, that doesn't have to
and
change.
maybe that those other craters are the other planets.
Yeah,
Maybe that they're going to Mars. Maybe they're going to Atlantis. Maybe Tartaria.
right, but
So
see
that's
then
been a very interesting thought too, because I don't know if you know who Gus Grissom is
I know the
or
name. Yeah, 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 no, okay,
John
cool.
Lear. So John
Mm,
Lear is one of the like godfathers of conspiracies. He's controversial in his own right, but he talks about the story of Gus Grissom, who was a NASA astronaut that apparently questioned the NASA rockets and didn't
mm,
believe that these are actually going to go to space and laughed at this idea. And what happened to him? Well, he died in a mishap where the like his shuttle caught fire as it was supposed to launch, and he burned to
mm.
death. And
I
well, case
mean,
closed. Anybody that's at that elite level is no longer asking questions about that stuff.
exactly. That's the thing. It builds back into, we're not saying that these are false flags. We're saying that there's such a disregard for what is the
Mhm.
human life when it
Oh,
doesn't go
yeah.
according to plan. No, but immediately I see you got idea. Go.
Yeah, this is actually a part of the conversation that Dave and I had too, is that when we say that something is staged or a false flag, like for example, the OPCW Syrian gas chemical attack,
Mm-hmm.
where there were claims that there was the Syrian government that used chemical weapons on its people, but the investigation actually concluded that that was fake, that that was not real, and that maybe there were actually loss of life, but the hmm.
The
Okay,
exact
that's
methodology and reason wasn't what
yeah,
we were
yeah, yeah,
initially told.
yeah.
It's the same thing as we covered it in our dual kraken the other day. Ivermectin for 3 days was being touted as making men 85% infertile.
Mhm,
Then immediately 3 days later, they're like, actually, sorry, that study that we were talking about that everyone in their whole fucking minds was referencing
mhm,
was an
mhm.
invalid study. But
Yeah,
that's 3 days
yeah.
later. People have already read it. It's already in their minds.
The Kabul airport, that
Right.
the footage they used was actually from a Dallas Cowboys game.
Right.
Like they're yeah, I mean
It's
that's
so
its own kind of
it's
like
no, it's but it's exactly what we mean. It's not that
mhm,
things aren't happening. It's just that we're not being told how it actually is happening. And so when things happen in tragic form, like our astronaut we just mentioned, Gus dying, it's not that they didn't like have an accident happen, but it was mutually beneficial for all the parties that survived.
mhm,
So
mhm.
it's just something to be said about it, and that's really what we're getting into here. Now, I mean, you asked a question, ask another if you got one. I can keep asking though.
Yeah, if you got a question, you ask. Let me think and see if I've got some for you.
Okay, no, no problem. The I will build back into that. So you just talked about, the crater. Are they going to other places when they're leaving? Like, okay, sure, but then how do you yourself incorporate back in the telescope that you looked through? Is there things outside of our worldview around the ice wall and other craters, and then still off of this giant massive rock that we're actually talking about that we may live in, there's still plasma space above us or further inside of us if it's a concave giant rock. You get what I'm saying? Like, so what
Well,
did you
so
observe in
okay,
that
yeah, yeah,
view?
yeah. So in this the concave Earth model, like if the idea that when we're looking out into space, you're actually looking inside the
Hmm.
planet. So then, what are stars? What
Yeah.
is it that you're looking at? And that's actually the term that is used in this cosmology is sonoluminescence. And
Mm.
sonoluminescence is a real scientific term that is when sound is created in liquid, it creates basically exactly what we see a star looking like through an amateur astronomer telescope. Now,
Oh,
we have to specify that it's an amateur astronomer telescope and not a NASA telescope,
sure.
because part of the whole deceit and why I'm so skeptical of everything NASA produces is that everything is CGI, or everything is like, computer composite
Mm-hmm.
image, or is an artist's rendering. Like
Right.
if you look at pictures of the Jupiter, Earth, Venus, they're the exact same image, but you just see that they slightly alter the image through some Photoshop technique. And so this, yeah, I do wonder about that when I'm looking at the stars and I see Jupiter and Saturn, and I see Saturn move in the telescope, and I have to like adjust the telescope to keep up with
Right.
it. It's like, okay, so something is moving. Am I moving? Are they moving? Are we all moving? Because, the conventional model is that we're hurtling through space at, hundreds of miles an hour, and the Earth is rotating, and then we're rotating around the
Around the
sun, and
sun,
then
and they're
we're
rotating
rotating
around that.
exactly
Right.
everything,
Yeah.
and then binary stars and then galaxies and, spirals. I subscribe to the spiral idea.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the Fibonacci sequence, which in itself may not be the authentic spiral, as maybe
Sure. But
you're
we see
familiar
it
with talking about the
recreated
Christos
through
sequence
everything.
versus the Fibonacci sequence.
Yeah.
But there is a spiral essence to our existence.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And it's at all scales, just like the Fibonacci
mhm,
spiral does
mhm,
too.
mhm,
And so that uh, there's a trick to it all, and there's a lot of mental gymnastics that go into trying to fit all of this into plausible observability, right? And all you can tell is that the things that the conventional heliocentric model says should be observable don't always happen. I think specifically in my head of a picture only a couple weeks ago where in the sun on the horizon you could see the outline of the skyscrapers in Chicago from like across Lake Superior type of thing. And if
mhm,
we were to
mhm,
believe that the Earth curves at a 13.3 degree. I don't remember the degrees, but if it curves on that sphere at the angle that we are told that it does, then you wouldn't be able to see Chicago on the horizon because it would have dipped below that angle.
mhm,
Things like that don't
mhm,
incorporate into the normal models we're given. So
mhm,
like sure we don't know an answer, but we just know that we're not given the right one.
mhm, mhm, exactly. And that's where I had a conversation with somebody the other day where they exactly asked me, "Oh, so you were a flat earther?" And it's like, well, no, but I think flat Earth is a part of it. And when I said that, the hair on her arm stood up, and she's like, "Ooh, okay, well, I like what you said, and Spirit is telling me that that's a good answer and that you're
Mm-hmm.
onto something." And that was the first time I had ever said that, but it just felt right. And
Yeah.
yeah, like one thing with the concave earth, and specifically the Lord Stephen Christ concave earth channel, is he actually doesn't change the physics of modern physics, even though I don't
Okay.
necessarily agree with it. He works within the physics model to explain how these layers of glass, this double layer of glass,
Mm-hmm.
would actually cause the refraction and show why we see the curvature of the earth. And he goes actually
Mm.
pretty deep into the scientific terms and all that. And
Mm-hmm.
he's made a lot of videos. Like I've watched an 8-hour documentary about all of it, but
From
obviously I
him,
haven't
right? Sure.
memorized it, but
Yeah, no,
it's
no,
at
no. I'm
least
not asking you
seeing
to,
it.
of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But like the changing the math doesn't have to happen to change the worldview is really the
Hmm.
plausibility there. And
Hmm.
that's yeah, no, that he's great at doing that. That Stephen Christ concave Tyler, I'm sorry, I don't remember it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it's true, it's valid, and it's real, and that's really what we're just trying to talk about
Hmm.
is the questionability of it all and what anyone else can offer to incorporate what we can see observe to better find an answer.
Mhm.
So in wrap up, I just wanted to, I'll get all the books that we mentioned from you here and I'll put
Mhm.
them
Mhm.
in the description. Is there anything else specifically you want to touch on? Like anyone else you want to make sure that you mentioned that you've learned a lot from? Is there any other view that we just didn't get to touch on and you want to quickly go over?
Well, yeah, one of the terms actually, I tried to do a total like a paradigm revamping maybe
Mm-hmm.
about 2 years ago. So I looked into the history of astrology, astronomy, and cosmology. And it was very interesting to note that when astronomers were making the shift from thinking that we were geocentric,
Mm-hmm.
which is that everything revolves around the Earth, to
Yeah.
heliocentric, it was not an easy transition. And the conventional academic world uh, resisted a lot, specifically because there's a term called stellar parallax, and the stellar parallax is basically an example would be you're driving in a car on the highway and
Mm-hmm.
you see a telephone pole, a tree, and then beyond that the mountains. And as you're driving in the car, the telephone poles that you drive by, the trees that you drive by, in the mountains, they seem like they're moving at different speeds based on their distance from where you are in the vehicle. So
Right.
they use this as like a cosmic stellar parallax to view the stars and said that, okay, if things are at different distances, then our perspective should be changing. And I'm not explaining it
No, you are. I
super
think I get
well.
exactly what you mean.
Yeah,
Basically
but
that
yeah.
basically that things on this scale can apply to things on that scale too. Why wouldn't they if we're accepting that
Mm-hmm.
scale here? And so it just changes. I mean, like it's not talked about. It's glossed over and like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's accurate, but like, yeah, but that star's 93 million miles away.
And like that is still a controversial thing where it was almost like somebody brought up came with a theory, here's an explanation, and they said, okay, good enough, let's accept this as the fundamental belief system of everything about space and just move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And that, there's a lot to dig in to go into about how that relates to archaeology, about history,
Right.
about physics, about biology, chemistry, etc. How it's, just everything is just a theory, like,
Mm-hmm.
the Darwin's theory of evolution. Well, Big Bang theory. Well, those are just that. They're just
They're
theories.
just
But
theories,
they're
right?
like, well, good enough. That's the way it is. Let's stick with this. And anybody that questions it, well, we're going to just, make sure that they don't have a
And
voice and are
right.
discredited.
And so what makes you talked about when they were changing from geocentric to heliocentric. What made that worldview acceptable at that time on such a mass scale and then made it okay to change entire paradigm like we're talking about now at that point? Is it because neither one was right on track and so they flat earth, they thought geocentric, like sure, totally, yeah, like that's not right, we're not that thing in the middle of the universe, fine, you can believe that. Oh, now everyone's thinking maybe there's some math behind like not being on a sphere and the sun's what we're like, you know what I mean? Like it maybe because they were both lies, it was okay
Yeah,
to switch
yeah.
from one to the
Well, and
other,
I
but
think,
why can't we
and
switch again?
I by no means. Yeah, well, I think that actually it was like the Islamic world, the
Mm-hmm.
Islamic mathematicians and astronomers were really resistant to this new way of thinking, which is, as you brought up earlier, is like the Copernican model. And it
Right.
was almost as if the Western world, which is, funded and financed by the
Mm-hmm.
Vatican and the Roman Empire and all that, they're like, no, 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 let's bring in a new way of thinking and just totally discredit, ignore the Eastern world. Like, the
Yeah.
Chinese way of thinking, the Islamic way of thinking, the Persian, and just say, nope, here's the Western way of thinking. We're the new dominant train of thought. We're going to rewrite the maps. We're going to rewrite the history. We're going to tell you that this is the way reality is.
Right.
And, if you disagree with us, well, we're going to kill you in war in the name of God. Sorry.
Right. Sure. Yeah. No, it works, doesn't it? It's pretty convenient. If you want to sail on our seas, you have to accept our naval maps. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and maps. Oh, next time we have a
We can
discussion,
get
I
into
would
maps. Yeah, no,
really would love to dig
absolutely.
into
Yeah, that'd
that.
be beautiful.
Ancient cartography and yeah.
Right, because it's just all there. So, or who's lying? And I think this was a great conversation. I think that
Mm-hmm.
we had a lot of fun. I think people will draw a lot of from it, and just be, and
Mm-hmm.
that's all we really want to do is just like open some minds a little bit. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree. I'm glad you took the time with me.
It's a pleasure to have to be here, and I love what you're doing again, and to be a part of this movement of just asking questions and provoking thought. That's yeah. Anybody have any questions, comment. I'm going to be checking this to see, and I'll share the links with Camden. And yeah, hopefully just we get more questions, because that's all we can
Absolutely.
do.
That's all
Just
we want.
ask. Mm-hmm.
So everyone have a great Sunday night. Dave on an interview right now that should be posted probably tomorrow. It's going to be good stuff. We're looking forward to having a good week of content with everybody. Have a nice night.